Hi everyone, welcome to Maximum Attack Rallying. I've been promising this video for a long time because I'm going to talk to you about a car that I own, and it is not this Ford Escort that I bought blind off eBay last year. There is going to be more coming about that. I need to buy a battery for it, but I haven't had time. No, I am here to talk to you today about something much more special than this, though it is another Ford. Should I do a dramatic introduction? No, let's not. It is none other than this Ford Escort F2 kit car. More specifically, my Ford Escort F2 kit car. And as you can see, it's looking a little bit sorry, sitting here with no front bumper, no lights, and lots of other bits missing, but it is mine. And in this video, I am going to tell you the story of how I came to own this car and why it's sitting in this barn and what's going to happen with it. So let's talk about F2 kit cars. Before we get into my car then, let's do a little history lesson. So in the early 90s, rallying was dominated by Group A, which was a set of regulations designed to allow manufacturers to modify a production car. So the cars had to look standard, but underneath they were very modified indeed, with modified suspension, transmission, engines, lots and lots of changes to turn them into fire-breathing race or rally cars. We had a few different categories, obviously four-wheel drive at the top with cars like the Legacy and Sierra. But there were categories for Group A underneath that. So you had Group A5, which was for cars up to 1300cc. Then you had Group A6, which was for cars up to 1600cc. Group A7, which was for cars up to 2000cc. And then Group A8 was for your four-wheel drive cars. And there was particular interest growing in A7 for 2-litre cars. Cars like the Opel Kadett, Renault Clio, Volkswagen Golf were proving reasonably competitive, even in certain WRC events, and were attractive to manufacturers because at that time most companies were making some kind of 2-litre hot hatch. So this led the FIA to create the World 2-litre Cup. That started in 1993, and from there we saw growing interest and eventually obviously exploded into the kit car era that we know and love. And Ford at this time were very much committed to their four-wheel drive program, had no interest in creating a Group A version of the RS2000. They'd done a one-make championship for the car in the UK, but they were basically just lightly modified road cars, and they were not interested in a full Group A program. And this is where Gordon Spooner Engineering comes in. So they had been involved in the development of the Escort Cosworth and were running privateer cars across Europe. And Gordon Spooner himself saw the potential in this 2-litre two-wheel drive category and looked at the RS2000 and thought it might be a good base. So he went to Ford. They said, well, if you want to do it, you can do it, but there's no money. So he decided to take it on his own. Ford allowed him to do that, eventually agreeing to help with the homologation process after a tricky period of them trying to make him prove that the car was worthwhile effectively, as obviously it had their name on it. But eventually they agreed and helped him with the homologation of the car. And we got the first Group A RS2000s in 1994. So like all Group A cars, they looked very much standard, but there was lots of modifications to the suspension, Bilstein dampers, new hubs, new track control arms, new cross members, new rear axles, all of the usual things. One thing that did make the Group A RS2000 unique, however, was its gearbox. So while most manufacturers were still using H-pattern dog engagement gearboxes, GSE knew from the off that they wanted to go down the sequential route. So they worked very closely with Xtrac to develop a 6-speed sequential transmission. They also worked with Quaife to develop a similar but lower cost unit for club competitors. So it became, that was kind of the car's calling card in its early days. So they immediately went down the sequential route. They worked with mount tune on the engine. Group A regulations stipulated that you had to retain the standard inlet and exhaust manifolds, which are a bit of restriction, and I think it made it difficult for them to get through the 200 horsepower barrier originally. But eventually the Group A RS2000 became a very competitive car. So as I said, cars started to appear in '94. Gwyndaf Evans actually won the F2 category of the RAC Rally that same year. And then they had a full British Championship campaign. The car continued to develop, and Gwyndaf Evans won that championship in 1996 with a facelifted version of the Group A car. But things were already afoot, and we were seeing a new generation of cars that would take the 2-litre category to the next level. And that was for the kit cars, which many of you will know and love. So essentially the FIA granted an extension to the Group A regulations for 2-wheel drive cars to allow those standard inlet and exhaust manifolds to be replaced, and for wider bodywork to be fitted to enhance the suspension and handling. So we got wider tracks, and basically what that allowed was manufacturers to put together a kit of parts to upgrade an existing Group A car, and Renault were a big advocate for this. So you saw the Clio Maxi that came along in 1995, the 306 Maxi as well, and obviously things snowballed from there, became a very, very high cost category very quickly. Ford, meanwhile, and GSE, they had very much aimed the RS2000 at the customer market. So while they knew that they had to develop a kit car, they were conscious of things getting out of hand. So they worked with Mountune to develop an engine package. So the standard inlet manifold was replaced with a slide throttle inlet manifold, and the standard exhaust was replaced as well. And there was a set of wider arches, though these were actually based on the wide arches from Escort Cosworth. There were lots of those sitting around at that time as the road car was going out of production. So it seemed like a sensible way to build a kit car without going down the road of lots and lots of bespoke parts. So that car was homologated in the summer of 1996 and did not actually appear in the British Championship, for example, in 1997 due to the regulations of that series. But the car was developing throughout 1996, and it was a good gravel car. You know, the Group A RS2000 by that point was probably the best all-rounder in Formula 2 terms. But then obviously the evolution continued, and as we got into 1997, it became quite clear to GSE that in order to keep up, they would need another evolution of the car. If you look at what Peugeot, Renault and the like were spending, you know, that compromise kit car was never going to cut it if they wanted to win championships outright. So a final evolution was created in the summer of 1997. That would become known as the Escort Maxi kit car, and that's the one that had the really big wide arches that were a little bit reminiscent of a Mark II Escort. Got the much deeper front bumper, which had the bottom portion of a Escort WRC front bumper moulded into it, and the rear wing moved from the top of the tailgate down to the bottom of the tailgate. So there was obviously that visual package. There was big changes under the skin, so the front anti-roll bar was relocated, the front track was widened again, and the rear axle was modified a little bit more. So there were some big suspension changes. The engine was also updated, so there was the slide throttle inlet was replaced with a roller barrel inlet to improve drivability, and there was a new exhaust manifold. So quoted power for the original kit car was 250, 260, 270 horsepower. For the Maxi kit car, that went up to a quoted 280 horsepower, and that was the final evolution, the final swan song for the programme. Gwyndaf Evans debuted that car in the UK on the Ulster Rally in 1997 and finished second, though it had already made its European debut by that point. So that was the final evolution. My car, of course, is the middle evolution. It's the first generation of kit car. But that is a brief history. I'm going to stop there because I think it's much more important that we talk about my car. But hopefully that has given you a little bit of an insight into what an Escort kit car is. So let's go back to the shed. So history lesson over. How did I end up with this car? So I'm trying to think exactly what year it was. It's 2013 or 14, I believe. As you will know if you've followed me, that I had a yellow Escort RS2000 rally car. So at the time I was rebuilding that car and didn't really have any plans to buy another one. I did have it in mind in the future that I would build something else. I wanted to build a better car. But this car came up for sale, and I think it's safe to say I was already a bit of an F2 nerd by this point. I'd spent a lot of time looking into the cars and researching their history because I grew up watching F2 on TV, like I'm sure a lot of you did if you're a similar age to me. And I loved that era, and I particularly liked the Ford. I was always into Fords when I was younger, so I was very drawn to the Escort, and I remember playing the Mobile One Rally Championship game and all that stuff, so I was very drawn to them. And then a friend of mine, Matt Lewis, was building his own car from a road car body shell, custom cages, roll cage and bits and pieces. It had all the maxi body panels and maxi suspension and everything. So I was talking to him a lot, and we found out about this car. So he already had an engine by this point, but didn't have a gearbox. And we got wind of this car through Guy Woodcock, who used to own P2 FMC, the Grindaf Evans Ulster and Manx 97 car, and we found out about this car as for sale in the northeast of England. It had been built up from spare parts and was sitting unused, and we contacted the guy and we did a deal. So Matt bought the X-Track sequential gearbox and I bought everything else. So body shell, trying to think what was included. I'm going to put some pictures in. There was a body shell engine, some suspension bits, dashboard, some brake parts and various things. And then with help from Guy Woodcock, who at the time still had a large stock of spares, I was then able to buy front brakes and various other things. So that was how the deal came about. It was a case of, I didn't really need a car, but the opportunity to buy an F2 car doesn't come up very often. And I had to take it. You know, they're not easy cars to get hold of, and buying one that wasn't complete allowed me to do it, because obviously a complete one would be worth a lot more money. So this was affordable for me, even though it's missing lots of parts. So that's how I ended up with it. As I said though, it is missing lots of parts, so it was always going to be a long-term project, and so it turned out to be. So it ended up sitting for a while with Matt, and then he did some bits to the bodywork. So originally it was red when I got it. You can see it's now white, so he painted it white. It does really need a little bit of bodywork though, so that I'm 100% happy with it. And I collected some more parts where I could. As I said, Guy Woodcock was very helpful in that respect. He managed to help me get tarmac front brakes and some hubs and various other bits and pieces. So that's kind of where we are. So when Matt had his own workshop and when he decided to give that up, it moved down here to me and has kind of been in storage ever since. So it's been in storage quite a long time. Obviously with me leaving overseas, I haven't really had a chance to do anything with it. That changes today though. So we're not just here today to have a look at it, we are here to do something to it. I'm going to take off the inlet manifold, which I will show you in a second. And there is a very good reason for that, and it is because I've bought a new engine. Why have I bought an engine for a car that already has an engine? Well, let me explain. So basically, as I said, this car came with an engine. It's a gravel spec mount tune engine, around 220 horsepower. It's got the slide throttle, so it's period correct for the car. The engine number even matches the chassis number. So this is chassis number 7, I want to say. Yes, 7, and it's engine number 7 as well, which is a bit of a coincidence. But the engine hasn't run for a long time. You know, it's been sitting for a long time. And as I said, when I bought the car, my friend Matt bought the X-Track gearbox, and he already had an engine. So he has decided, because his car is not an original Gordon Spooner built body shell, that he wants to switch to a more modern engine. So he's bought a Duratec engine and a Beckett sequential gearbox. So that means that I have bought his X-Track gearbox, which was the one that was with this car originally. And I also bought his engine as a package, because it means that I can just put them in the car and it's ready to go. I don't have to rebuild the engine in the car. Am I gonna, I'm not totally sure what I'm gonna do with the engine that's with the car right now. I might sell it at some point, or I might rebuild it, because I would love to do one to tarmac specification, so different camshafts and things. So I might do that, but we'll have to see. But for now, it made much more sense to buy an engine that runs and I can just put it in the car and go with the gearbox. So I know that that is all set. It's exactly the same spec of the engine in this car. So his engine is a gravel spec engine, is identical to this one. It's just in running, ready to go condition. So I don't have it yet. I have to pick it up. So he's going to store it for a while, but that will be going in here. But obviously there's lots and lots of things to do before we get to that point. So let's have a look at some of those things that we need to do. So I'll do a very quick walk around with the car so you can see some of the details, talk about what makes an F2 car an F2 car, some of the bits that are missing, and you can see the mountain that I've got to climb. So let's just start with the outside. I'll do a quick walk around in case you're not too familiar. I know I talked a little bit about this in the history section about the development of the cars, but so this is an early kit car The build date of this body shell was November 97. This particular car was built, it was the Spooner built the body shell and it was sent to Boreham to be sold, so it was a customer body shell, and it was bought by Boland Motorsport, who ran the cars for, was it Julian Porter in 1999, wasn't it? Leo McCallaghan in 1998, and Lars Goran Anderson in 1998, I think, wasn't it as well? So it was bought by Boland Motorsport. It was then sold to a guy called Will Onions in Wales. I think Guy Woodcock owned it briefly, and then it ended up in the northeast. So it was never a works car, but it is a genuine body shell. So there are some things that give that away. So if you think that an F2 car is just an Escort with some wide arches, like that, you are mistaken. There are a few distinct details that make an F2 shell an F2 shell. We will start at the front. So you have these jacking points here that are welded to the front cross member. I will put in a picture showing how they work. Obviously you've got the wider arches, so early kit cars had these. These are modified Escort Cosworth wings, so basically it's an Escort Cosworth wing. They slice it here and extend it so it is wide as an Escort Cosworth. Moving down the side, you have a jacking point here, a sill stand point here. The Gordon Spooner cars only had them at the front. They did not have them at the rear. So there is nothing here. Rear arches, sorry, I'm just falling over. Again, Escort Cosworth sheet metal, but you can tell the difference. It's wider because you have this step, which you would not have on an Escort Cosworth. Up at the top here, you've got carbon fibre wing mounted to the top of the tailgate. This is contentious. A lot of people don't like this. I actually like it. I think it kind of suits the car somehow. I don't know. These were a bit of a bit, so obviously with modified Escort Cosworth panels, so I like this. I know a lot of people hate it. If you look at later cars, they moved it down to the bottom of the tailgate, and if you look at a lot of the cars that were run by Gordon Spooner Engineering directly, they didn't bother with it and they just used the standard Escort spoiler. This is an original though, it's carbon fibre, and I'm very, very lucky to have that because they are extremely rare. Also, you've got a roof vent. This is the same as the one that was used on some Escort World Rally cars. The Escort Cosworth Group A had 2 flaps, but this, you see this on some four-wheel drive Escorts as well. Talking of vents, we have the bonnet vent. This was another contentious piece. I believe this was designed on the fly and is not particularly well liked by some of those involved. So from the outside it looks like that, but as I said, it goes much, much deeper than that. So let's open the bonnet and show you some of the other details. So lifting this very stiff bonnet up, which does not have a bonnet stay, which is going to make life very difficult when, when removing the inlet manifold shortly. So a few details. You can see the roll cage. You have tubes going through the bulkhead. Worth noting, if we come back a bit, that on a kit car, the angled tubes were modified. So on a Group A car, which uses the standard inlet manifold, that cross was more shallow. But on these cars, they changed the angle of those tubes in order to clear the throttle bodies. You've got a different engine mount down here, look. You've got the chassis plaque there. You've got strengthening on the suspension strut tops there. The bulkhead is trimmed down. Obviously you've got plates over where the brake servo would be. You've got additional, let me change the angle, look, you've got additional bosses welded in there. Strengthening in here. And this is the thing, if you, let me just put that down. This is the thing with Group A cars, it's not just Escorts. All Group A cars were heavily modified from standard and are very much different from their production cousins. So if we come inside, unfortunately the car is full of junk. I say junk, it's pieces of it. So you've got down here, look, you've got extra metal brackets welded in, so footrests and things. You've got seat mounts here. Obviously you've got the roll cage, which is extremely basic by modern standards. So single door bar, single diagonal in the rear. But you've got, if you can see here, look, So this is the main hoop. You've got a strengthening piece, which is a piece of tube cut and stitched in there. Down here you've got some brackets. I think that's for the battery, I want to say. So this is, you know, this is a very, very different car to a regular Escort, and I think that is one of the misnomers perhaps with Group A, is that people think it's almost a showroom category, but a Group A car is very, very far removed from a road car. You know, the body shell is very, very heavily modified. These were reportedly acid dipped using a very, very corrosive acid to make the steel thinner. The body shells were selected off the production line to be the lightest. So these are very, very heavily modified cars, and obviously all of the mechanical components are different. Brakes, uprights, dampers, everything is different. There is not a single piece of the suspension which is carried over from the road car. So here you can see, I can't get it out unfortunately because it's a bit of a faff, but this is the front cross member. So this is the front part of the cross member for the front suspension. So you can see it's all boxed in, custom made. Compare that to a standard cross member, which is very, very flimsy by comparison. So yes, this is a very, very different beast. So in terms then of things that need to be done and things that are missing, as I said, I'd like to do some bodywork to the car. It's okay, but the paint is a little bit bubbly in places. I think a little bit of moisture got under it, unfortunately. And there's a little bit of work I'd like to do to the quarter panel. I would love to show you that, but it's very much up against a wall, so I can't. I'd really like to replace the roof skin because it's not perfect. So I would like to have another look at the body, but mechanically, there is some things that need to be done. So we've got an engine, as I said, we've got a gearbox, as I said, so we've got that, we've got all the mounts, drive shafts, clutch, everything there. So that's really, really good because that's obviously the big expensive stuff, and the gearbox is basically impossible to find. So I'm really pleased that I've got that. That said, there is still a lot to buy. So we have got front brakes, so we've got 6-piston AP racing calipers. That is kind of it at the front though. So I need to get front uprights, I need to get track control arms and compression struts. They are pretty similar to the ones used on the Escort World Rally cars, so that's not too much of an issue, so I can adapt those. I've got the front cross member, because you saw it just inside a second ago. I've got the steering rack, which is good. So we've got some positives there. I need to get a steering column, because that's different to the road car part as well. At the rear, I've got rear discs, bells and bits and pieces, rear hubs. I do need to get a rear beam, which again is different to the standard part because it's independent, which I could do an entire video about, but I'm not going to. We will talk about that in more detail when it comes, but luckily Matt, who I got the engine from, he has the correct rear beam because he, again, is going to upgrade to a slightly different design, so hopefully I can get his, which will get the rear of the car pretty much finished. So that's kind of high level. Then obviously there's seats, belts, fire extinguishers. The wiring loom is there. I do have an original Pectel ECU, but I'm probably not going to use it. The engine I bought runs on Omex, and I'm going to get the loom, and I'll probably just put an Omex in it for simplicity for now, and then see what happens in the future. It would be nice to run it on the original Pectel ECU, but they're locked generally and very hard to deal with because obviously they're very old. And you see it with most historic cars now, you know, they tend to run them on modern electronics just because it makes a lot more sense. So yeah, so that's kind of it. That is a very quick overview. I think otherwise, I'm just going to stop talking for a bit and take the inlet manifold off. So I'm going to try and video it. I'm going to try and find something to keep the bonnet open so I can put the camera on. So let's try and do that. Can I just say that you should all be proud of me right now. So in order to keep the bonnet open, I am using an anti-roll bar. Which is a nice excuse to look at it. Look, so it has a hole here for the adjustable blade. That's where the bush sits. These have been powder coated a while ago, so thankfully the engine mount is doing its job. So I am going to see if I can put this camera somewhere and see if we can't get this thing off. I want to take this off. The reason I'm removing this, by the way, so here is the engine that I talked about. This is just going to come out of the car at some point, obviously once we start rebuilding. But I figured these throttle bodies might as well come off because the new engine comes with a set. So what's the point in having 2 sets? So these I'm probably going to sell. So the as I said in the history bit, the F2 car has become eligible for historics this year, so maybe someone would like these for a historic build. So I'm going to see if we can get this here inlet manifold off. So there we have it, an empty space where the inlet manifold used to be. What a chore that was. And here it is on the floor in 3 pieces. So you've got the black piece that goes onto the cylinder head. Then you've got a modified original inlet manifold. And then you've got the piece that everyone cares about, really, I suppose you could say, haven't you? The throttle bodies themselves, so you can see down inside maybe. They are closed, there you go, look. Don't know if I'm going to be able to do this with, if I'm going to have enough hands to actually demonstrate them working. But there we go. So, if we just flip them over, you've got the mechanism there. It's a bit stiff, so I will get these cleaned up, and then you can see it's open. So this spring, I suspect, has seen better days. I'll yeah, get those cleaned up. So throttle bodies off. So I retreated to the car and to air conditioning. As I said, getting that thing off was a bit of a nightmare. Obviously, there are some bolts that have been on there for a very, very long time. Interesting that there was only 5 bolts holding it on, which I think is less than standard, but I don't remember. It's been a long time since I've looked at an RS2000 engine. So, inlet manifold off. It was nice to work on the car. It's been a long time since I've even seen it and done anything to it. So the last time I did anything was when it moved to its current location. So we bolted up some standard Escort suspension to it just to keep it mobile, which is why it looks a bit knock-kneed and silly on tiny little wheels. But that will, of course, all change when it gets its correct suspension and wheels and all those parts fitted as 2 tractors go by. Look at that. You can tell we're in Norfolk, can't you? In farm country. So that is kind of it for now. I thought I would introduce you to the project. I hope you have found it interesting. As I said, I will do a little bit more of an in-depth video on the history of the F2 Escorts at some point, because that is, as I said numerous times, a passion project of mine and just something that I love. I love that era, and I am very, very lucky to own one of the cars from that era, even though it is missing a lot of bits. But now we have an engine and gearbox. We are a significant step closer. So I think the plan from now is to try and keep an eye out for any other parts that come up and start to make arrangements for the bodywork. Because what I would really like to do, I think, is have a perfect kind of basis, you know, get the shell as good as it can be and start from there. So I'm going to try and get that quarter panel sorted out, which is going to be a bit of a challenge because it's based on an Escort Cosworth panel, and if I have to buy a spare Escort Cosworth rear quarter, that could be expensive, but otherwise I want to get that sorted out. I would love to try and find a roof skin for it and just get the shell as good as it can possibly be, get it in nice, fresh, period correct diamond white paint, and then start to bolt up all the fancy bits. Once I can get that rear beam from Matt, we'll have a lot of the parts for the rear end, so I can get that assembled fairly quickly. And the front end, obviously we can get the engine and gearbox in once I get that, because I've got all of the parts for that, and it's just a case of piecing together the front suspension, and then it's all the other bits and pieces in it. Fuel tank, so there is a fuel tank with the car, but it's a bag tank which is out of date, so it's a case of whether I buy a new bag tank or do I just make up an alloy tank for now. So there are still many unanswered questions, so you will just have to be patient, and hopefully I will be in a position to bring you another episode soon. As you can imagine, it is not the easiest having a project car in a different country, but I will try and keep things moving. So once we get the engine, hopefully we can do a little bit of something with that and show you a proper detailed look there. So for now though, I think we will wrap this one up. As always, make sure you like and subscribe. It's very helpful, and I really would like to get to 10,000 subscribers. That is the goal, so if we can keep pushing towards that, I am very grateful. Otherwise, follow me over on socials and keep your eyes peeled for the next video. I will see you again next time.